Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Hi, Malika here. As we close the book on 2024, we're bringing you 10 stories that shaped this momentous year. In this episode, we're returning to the U.S. city of Chicago, the site of this year's Democratic National Convention. It was an event that came after months of political upheaval. President Joe Biden's poor debate performance against Donald Trump threw the Democratic Party into chaos. When Biden ultimately dropped out of the race, Vice President Kamala Harris had just 107 days to unify a fractured base and mount a campaign. Our team was there, and the tension was palpable. Inside the convention arena, the atmosphere was electric, but outside, the frustrations mounted with the party's support for Israel's war on Gaza. The convention was a snapshot of a historic campaign, but one that ultimately fell short on Election Day. This episode originally aired on August 23rd, 2024. All dates and references reflect that time. Here's the show. Today, the contrasts of the DNC.
I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
As Kamala Harris emerges from a Democratic convention for the ages, will her historic nomination overcome the party's divisions or overwrite them? I'm Malika Bilal, and this is The Take. So I'm walking into the arena right now. This is the United Center where the Chicago Bulls play their games, and it is packed. And everyone looks really excited to be here. The vibe feels like a giant sporting event. Right now, delegates from across the country are doing roll call. Each state announces their presence, shares their excitement, really gets the crowd fired up about what they're here to do, and watch their nominees accept the nomination.
The great state of Minnesota, how do you cast your vote?
Minnesota, we cast 10 votes present, and we deliver 80
But roll call usually sounds a bit more formal, like it did at last month's Republican National Convention in Milwaukee.
Pursuant to the announcement of the delegation and the rules and procedures of this convention, Iowa, 79 votes, President Trump.
At this week's DNC, which confirmed Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as the Democratic nominees for president and vice president, a DJ kicked off party vibes.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is DJ Cassidy, and I'd like to welcome you all to the Democratic National Convention roll call!
The Democrats know how to put on a show. Carefully choreographed, tightly scripted, featuring the party's biggest stars. And the result from party members inside the hall, outright joy.
Oh my God, day 2 was a 10 out of 10. We had Michelle and Barack. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. It's a recipe for everything perfect in the world. I'm LaToya Greenwood, and I am from East St. Louis, Illinois. For me, it was a little emotional, and then it went back to being ready, fired up, and let's get this election over with and wrapped up and make Kamala our next president.
The Take team has been here in Chicago all week. We've been talking to the nominees' biggest critics and their biggest fans.
Kathleen Purdy, and I'm a delegate from Alliance, Ohio, a first-time delegate.
What got you inspired to become a delegate this time around?
I feel that the Biden-Harris administration has done an excellent job given the tools that they have to work with. And with the energy that I witnessed last night and the commitment with literally thousands of people and members and voters wanting to re-engage with democracy, I feel encouraged.
I'm Henry Cline. I'm from Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm a pledged district-level delegate in Nebraska's 1st congressional district. So I just turned 18, so this will be my first election and my first convention, yeah. I think when President Biden was speaking, you could really feel the gratitude and also the excitement in the air.
America, I gave my best to you.
Everyone is so thankful for what President Biden has done, but also we're ready to elect the first woman president and the next generation of president. And yeah, you could just feel the excitement radiating around the room.
My name's Alex Melendrez. I'm 31 years old. I am a delegate. I've been constantly telling other people that this is Barack Obama 08 level energy.
Hello, Chicago!
The reason I bring that up is because he really knew how to inspire a whole generation of folks. I always told people that I'm a child of the recession, and that's what got me into politics at like 12 years old. Seeing him come into office was my entryway to wanting to be in activism. His roots as a community organizer, I'm now an organizer by trade. And it brought me back to something where, it brought me back to my own roots as well.
I covered the campaign of 2008 and the inauguration of 2009 of Barack Obama, and a lot of this was like deja vu. The excitement, the crowds looking on in anticipation, standing only inside of these arenas. It's electric. But some Democrats told me that show rings hollow.
We oppose our government sending these weapons to the Israeli government that's using them to kill civilians. We think that the continuous flow of weapons is preventing a ceasefire that could save lives, a ceasefire that can ensure that every Palestinian and every Israeli captive is reunited with their families. We're hopeful that this party can do better.
Abbas Alawiya is a delegate from Michigan. That means he and his fellow uncommitted delegates have a seat on the convention floor.
Our movement gained a certain level of power here, certain leverage of negotiating power. And so we negotiated to have a panel yesterday. For the first time in our party's history, there was an official panel of the Democratic National Convention discussing Democrats organizing for Palestinian rights. We're hopeful that this party can do better than where we currently are. Right now, the policy of this party, unfortunately, is to continue the flow of weapons that are killing civilians. We just think that should change, especially because we've got loved ones over there. We've got loved ones in Gaza, and we think they should stay alive.
Yeah. After the break, how that hope was shattered. On the final day of the convention, uncommitted delegates and others were gathered outside the convention center. They were there because of news that they had received the night before.
I'm Maya Berry. I'm the executive director of the Arab American Institute, but I'm out here in my personal capacity as someone who has been part of the Democratic Party for decades because I deeply, deeply care about issues. I was inside the hall watching the speeches and anticipating a decision regarding whether or not an Arab American, or specifically actually a Palestinian American, Palestinian voice, or someone would elevate the issue of Palestine directly on the stage. When my son, who was sitting next to me, shared a tweet saying the answer was no from the DNC, and kind of gave me a look, which meant that it was time for us to get up, and we did. Because they put out a call then saying, for all those who support a ceasefire, join us outside. We joined them outside.
Abbas, the uncommitted delegate from Michigan, was visibly disappointed in the decision.
We made very clear in our discussions with Vice President Harris's team, we made very clear our ask is for a Palestinian American speaker to speak from this stage. I made that ask very respectfully. I want you to know the Democratic Party is actively making a decision to suppress any kind of discussion from the Palestinian stage from a Palestinian American.
But that wasn't their only demand.
It's a very simple message. We're telling VP Harris and President Biden, not another bomb. I feel like I've cried so much the last couple of days that I have no tears left. I am Lexis Zaydan. I am the co-chair of the Uncommitted National Movement and the director of our most recently launched Not Another Bomb campaign.
So tell me about Not Another Bomb. What was the inspiration?
Yeah, Not Another Bomb was inspired really coming out of the presidential primaries where we had gotten over 730,000 uncommitted votes. Ahead of the November election as a way to showcase to Biden and the administration and now the presumptive Democratic nominee VP Harris how many people across the country are actually in opposition to the way that the U.S. has been funding the weapons to Israel to launch a genocidal military campaign on the Palestinian people. We're beyond a ceasefire. We need an arms embargo.
Okay, so the shift from Biden to Harris, which in the party caused a lot of excitement, you feel it here in the halls.
Yep.
For you and the campaign, was there any glimmer of hope?
Yeah, I mean, it's not lost on us that we've seen more sympathy and empathy from VP Harris than we have seen with Biden. When she gave her address and talked about a ceasefire to then talking about Palestinian self-determination.
To ensure Israel is secure and to respect the right of the Palestinian people to dignity, freedom, and self-determination.
I've never heard the words Palestinian self-determination come out of any leader in any party's mouth. But for me, I think, we've said this multiple times, Palestinians can't continue to eat words. We don't want sympathy, we don't want empathy. And so while we have a glimmer of hope and we're engaging in really good discourse and conversation, we need action. And we need action very fast for two reasons: the moral imperative of saving Palestinian lives, but the electoral imperative that we're facing in November of saving the White House.
Though the uncommitted movement was denied a speaker slot at the DNC, they were at least in the halls of the convention center. Many other pro-Palestinian voices could only take to the streets of Chicago over the course of the week to try and have their voices heard.
This protest is happening in Chicago in the shadow of the DNC. It's where Democratic leaders are gathering. But the people here in Chicago are from all over the country. The states that the candidates for president of the United States are going to fight over to ensure they have their votes. We've seen signs from people who say queers for Palestine. People from all walks of life have gathered here to make their voices heard.
My name is Janine Al-Hadithi. I am the Chicago coordinator for the American Muslims for Palestine Chicago chapter. We can't go on after 10 months of protesting and doing all this organizing work, campaigning without being heard. We need at least some tangible change. So I'm hoping after this week, with like thousands of people in the streets of Chicago every single day for 5 days straight, there's at least some sort of acknowledgement of our work and hopefully, a permanent unconditional ceasefire in Gaza and an end to American funding to the apartheid state of Israel.
But for many supporters of Kamala Harris, like Henry, the delegate from Nebraska we heard from earlier, there's a feeling that she's better than the alternative.
Innocent people dying is bad. I think everyone can agree with that. And I think President Biden is making steps towards creating peace. And I think a President Kamala Harris would do even more. And hopefully we have peace before January, but I think it's a very difficult situation because Israel is an important ally of ours, and there are other countries in the region who have said that they are willing to attack Israel if we lay off, but we also need to create the fine line that we are not going to stand for people dying. I think at the end of the day, President Kamala Harris will be way better for world peace, for security around the globe, than a President Trump. He's made no commitment to peace in the Middle East, and I think we need to elect Kamala Harris to ensure that we have peace in the Middle East and peace around the globe.
And on Thursday night, Harris made that case for herself during her acceptance speech.
With respect to the war in Gaza, President Biden and I are working around the clock because now is the time to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done. And let me be clear, I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself, because the people of Israel must never again face the horror that a terrorist organization called Hamas caused on October 7, including unspeakable sexual violence, and the massacre of young people at a music festival. At the same time, what has happened in Gaza over the past 10 months is devastating. So many innocent lives lost. Desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety over and over again. The scale of suffering is heartbreaking. President Biden and I are working to end this war such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination.
But despite the show of unity and enthusiasm coming out of the DNC on the final night, people like Lexi from the Uncommitted movement are tired of having to fight for their humanity.
Personally for you, why do you do this? And what toll does it take on you?
One, I'm exhausted. Like, we've been here, and I have said to many people that I feel like I have to pimp my trauma out to the entire world right now to get people to move quickly on trying to save Palestinian lives. And I do this for two reasons. I'm a Palestinian American. My grandparents were victims to the 1948 catastrophe that displaced them. It's part of my ancestry, it's part of my lineage. And the second reason I do it is because I'm a human. Imagine being a Palestinian and, taxes being taken from you, knowing that those tax dollars are going towards contracts that are murdering my people. It's mental gymnastics. And to be here and have to pimp that trauma out and to make it palatable for people to be able to digest, it's exhausting, it's dehumanizing, it's frustrating. But as many Palestinians, we keep voting.
And that's The Take. That's also it for our team here in Chicago. Thanks for following along. If you want to catch up on our content from this week, head over to AJE Podcasts on X or Instagram. This episode was produced by Chloe K. Lee, Ashish Malhotra, and Sonia Bhagat, with Tamara Kandaker, Veronique Ishaya, Shraddha Joshi, and me, Malika Bilal. It was edited by Noor Wazwaz. Our sound designer is Alex Roldan. Joe Plord mixed this episode. Alexandra Locke is The Take's executive producer, and Ney Alvarez is Al Jazeera's head of audio. We'll be back tomorrow.